Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day to you, depending where you are in the world. Here we had a national holiday today, and I hope we had very, very hot weather. It was over 30 degrees centigrade, which is over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It was very warm. Hope you all had a good weekend and a good day today, depending where you are. The nighttime devotion is from Maranatha. The title today, Fanaticism and Tongues Speaking. 1 Corinthians 14, 32 and 33. The spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. A spirit of fanaticism has ruled a certain class of Sabbath keepers. They've sipped but lightly at the fountain of truth and are unacquainted with the spirit of the message of the third angel. Nothing can be done for this class until their fanatical views are corrected. Some of these persons have exercises which they call gifts and say that the Lord has placed them in the church. They have an unmeaning gibberish, which they call the unknown tongue, which is unknown not only by man, but by the Lord of all heaven. Such gifts are manufactured by men and women, aided by the great deceiver. Fanaticism, false excitement, false talking in tongues, noisy exercises have been considered gifts which God has placed in the church. Some have been deceived here. The fruit of all this have not been good. There are many restless spirits who will not submit to discipline, system, and order. They think that their liberties would be abridged were they to lay aside their own judgment and submit to the judgment of those of experience. The work of God will not progress unless there is a disposition to submit to order and expel the reckless, disorderly spirit of fanaticism from their meetings. Impressions and feelings are no sure evidence that a person is led by the Lord. Satan will, if he's unsuspected, give feelings and impressions. These are not safeguards. All should thoroughly acquaint themselves with the evidences of our faith, and the great study should be how they can adorn their profession and bear fruit to the glory of God. A trifling, joking, reckless spirit should be rebuked. It's no evidence of the grace of God upon the heart for persons to talk and pray with talent in meeting and then give up to a rough, careless manner of talking and acting when out of the meeting. The truth of God will never degrade, but will elevate the receiver, refine his taste, sanctify his judgment, and perfect him for the company of the pure and holy angels in the kingdom of God. Fanaticism and tongues speaking. I we had a discussion about this just the last couple of weeks, speaking in tongues and the gifts and what it actually means. And it's God is not the author of confusion. God is not the author of confusion. So when someone comes along speaking in tongues, otherwise known as babbling or gibberish, although they would call it speaking the language of angels or, oh, God understands what I'm saying. No one else does. And then it says, which is unknown not only by man, but by the Lord of all heaven. If you're not speaking something specific, how could anyone understand? All God can see in your head, if he can read your thoughts, is the fact you're making up gibberish to make yourself look clever or to make yourself look more spiritual. God is not the author of confusion. The first paragraph, a spirit of fanaticism has ruled a certain class of Sabbath keepers. They've sipped but lightly of the fountain of truth and are unacquainted with the spirit of the message of the third angel. Nothing can be done for this class until their fanatical views are corrected. So this primarily, the whole devotion is focused on people speaking in tongues. But that paragraph opens up a whole can of worms, because people are so fanatical about keeping the Sabbath, about keeping the commandments, about this. Yes, you'll be fanatical about it to the point that you must do it. But if you keep the commandments and yet you don't live with love in your heart, it means nothing. Love, I would say, is probably the most key thing in everything, every moment of your life. It's about love, because you cannot keep all the commandments if you do not love. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart and all your mind. If you cannot love, you're not going to go to heaven, pure and simple. Because you cannot keep the commandments if you cannot love. Sabbath keeping, people believe because they keep the Sabbath, they're going to go to heaven. They're doing everything right. And yet they don't give God their first fruits every morning. They don't tithe everywhere, how often. They don't whatever. They don't do various things. And another thing, most people, a lot of people think tithing is just about money. Tithing is about giving God your first fruits. That's about the day. That's about the time in the day. Your money, yes. It's about everything. Everything that is about you is a tithe. And if you're not giving that back to God, it's not just about money. And everyone likes to focus on is just money, because that is what this world focuses on. That is the biggest idol ever now, is money. And it is the love of money is the root of evil. All evil, as it said. The love of money. Because money becomes your idol. There's people with gifts, speaking in tongues. Speaking in tongues is about speaking another language. Not gibberish, not babbling, but another language. Another language is something that someone else would understand. It is what the disciples did on the day of Pentecost. They went out and preached in other languages that various other people could understand. Or they spoke something that no one else, and maybe one person could then interpret. So long as someone understands, it is speaking in tongues. It's not. Before I even started coming back to church, I used to visit various churches, and some people, they're all rolling around the floor, all these kind of churches, and all that kind of stuff. Or and then people are saying, "Oh, I'm anointed because I'm speaking in tongues." I didn't go back there for what? No. There are many restless spirits who will not submit to discipline, system, and order. God is not a God of confusion. He is a God of order, systematic, methodical discipline. The work of God will not progress unless there is a disposition to submit to order. Simple.